Welcome to Digital Literacy, a guide to using technology in journalism. This presentation is brought to you by the Henry W. Grady College of Journalism and Mass Communication at the University of Georgia.
All right, we're going to go ahead and take a second look at PhotoMechanic. In the first video, we talked about how to ingest or pull your images off of your card onto your hard drive, and in that process we wrote a generic caption and we did a batch renaming of all of our files. In this video, we're going to talk about how we use PhotoMechanic to do some picture editing here and some picture selections before we send them over to Photoshop. So what I've done here is I've opened up a folder full of images, and we'll just start at the upper left-hand corner here with this little slider. Now this is to set your thumbnail size, so if you've got a lot of images you can make them really small, or you can zoom in. On a screen about this size, I like to have about 4 across. That gives me a nice view as to what's going on here. Usually you're going to want this set for either file name or capture time to keep them in a sequential order there. Now on each one of these images there's 4 buttons at the 4 corners. The upper left and the upper right are rotators, and you don't have to worry about that too much because your camera has a sensor built in, so it knows the difference between horizontals and verticals. In the lower left hand corner, if I click that, that gives me that caption information for this particular image. You'll notice that this is saying IPTC info 4 and then a specific file up here across the top, as opposed to IPTC stationary pad, which is what we were looking at before. So this allows me to sort of proofread and see that my caption information is there. I've got contact information. I can scroll down here and I can see where this was shot, copyright info, all of that stuff is in there. So go ahead and click cancel. It's the lower right hand corner one is where we start to see the power in PhotoMechanic, because what this does is this gives us a larger view. And for the first time we can go ahead and over here in the upper right hand corner we can see all of that metadata that was applied from the camera. So I can see the type of camera, I can see frame numbers, focal lengths, ISO, aperture, shutter speed. All of that information is right in here. It's telling me what program mode I was on. Now you guys are supposed to be in manual. I shoot an aperture priority in some situations, and this is one of those there. So there's lots of information that's in there that can be useful for you for one of your upcoming assignments to nouns and verbs. When you have to find those f2.8 and f8 or smaller aperture ones, this is where you'll check it. Now down below that I've got zoom opened, and this is set to 1, and what this allows me to do is right now it's set so that I can see the whole frame, but if I toggle this on by just checking it, this is going to zoom into a 1:1 pixel ratio if I have this at 1. And this is where I can check sharpness. Now the other way that I can adjust this is I can just tap the Z key, and that will allow me to zoom in. And when I'm zoomed in, you can see that my cursor is a little hand. That lets me sort of move around so that I can figure out exactly what I want for sharpness. And then in the lower right hand corner here I have the histogram turned on. And histogram again is a graphical representation of your exposure, and we see this on the back of the camera, we see it here in PhotoMechanic. We'll also see it when we go into Photoshop, and this can give you a sense of how your exposure is doing. So what I'm seeing here is a lot of shadow areas, which would be the dark jacket in here and the shadow inside the door. Some midtones in here. This is going to be his coat and the gravel down here, and then there's a spike over here on the right hand side, and that's because I've actually lost the detail up here in the sky. I got it in his face, but I lost it in the sky. So to move from image to image, I can do a couple of things. I can use these green arrows up here in the upper right hand corner and move through them. I can also just use the left and right arrows that are on your keyboard to move through all of these different frames. Now when I find a frame that I think I'm going to want to use, one that I possibly would want to select, in the lower right hand corner here, sorry about that, I've got a little check mark, and what that is that's a tagging function. So that one is now tagged. I can also just use the T key. Tapping the T key will tag and untag images. So let's tag that one, let's tag this one, tag that one, and that one. Because what I can also do with these images, and that cycles me back around once you get to the end, is when I close this out, which I can just hit Command W, or just hit that button in the upper left hand corner, I've got some view options up here. So under the pull down menu, I can go to View Tagged, and this is just going to show me the ones that are tagged. And then I can go to View All. Now if I just want to sort of narrow this down and say, you know, I've got lots and lots of images here, but I think, you know, maybe it's one of these first 3 or one of these ones over here, the other thing I can do is I can hold down the Command key and I can just select, say, those 4, and then my laughing cowboy, my cancer cowboy here. And since I have those ones selected, I can go to View, Selected, and I'll just see those ones there. Or if I'm in View All and I've got some selected like this, if I come in here and then I use the left and right arrow keys, all it's going to do is cycle me through those ones that I had selected. So there's a couple of different ways that you can sort of group and sort these things. There's also some starring that you can use if you want. There's some color coding that you can put on these. I tend not to use those because that's for much, much larger projects, things that I'm not generally going to be working on. But with those ones tagged, so I'm just going to hit Command T so that it selects my tagged ones. And then I can view my tagged ones there. So there's the 4. At this point in time, I can hit the Command E key, so just Command E, and what that will do is that's the edit function, and the edit function will bring me over into Photoshop. So in a moment here you'll see that it's going to log me into Photoshop, and then I can start working on these individual images. Now I'm just going to pop back over here while Photoshop opens in the background. If I'm in an individual image like this, I've got an edit button up here, and you'll notice that in the little mouse over, instead of it being Command E, it's just E. So if I'm looking at one image, it's just E. If I'm looking at a group that I have selected, it's Command E. So that's the basics on how we're going to work with PhotoMechanic. So when you come in for your assignments, and after you go through that download, batch caption, batch rename process, you'll then eject your card, close out of PhotoMechanic, eject your card, and then you'll burn your DVDs, and then you'll open your folder back up again here in PhotoMechanic. And then you can use those arrow keys to move through all of these different things, and the tagging key to decide which images it is that you want to bring over into Photoshop.
This presentation has been brought to you by the Henry W. Grady College of Journalism and Mass Communication at the University of Georgia. For more videos in this series, visit us online at visualjournalism.info/diglit.